Hi everyone, it's Vanessa. I'm going to be filming 2 videos of what I've been reading, so like a 2-part wrap-up. I realize there's like 17 things that I need to talk about since the last time that I wrapped something up, so let's get started. The last thing that I read since the last time that I updated was The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I really loved the characters of this book. I especially loved Star and Star's parents. I thought that these characters had a lot of heart and were really charming and personable. I also really enjoyed that all of the issues that were presented in this book were very complex. It showed us neighborhoods that are not usually featured in bestsellers. That was really refreshing for me. I also thought that the way that it handled the issues made it seem like it wasn't all gloom. There's definitely a lot of grief in this book, and the way that it is portrayed, in my opinion, is very believable, but there was also a lot of laughter and life happening as well, which shows you that even in like the darkest times, the most grief-stricken that you could be, Star and Star's family still found a way to get through the days and use their bond to create a safe space in their household. I think the only downside for me was that the writing was not my favorite. I find this a lot in YA books, that the pop culture references really take me away from the story. That is totally a me thing, and some people have no problem with this, but I get really distracted when I see memes portrayed in fiction. And while I understand that the author is trying to show you that what's happening in the story is connected to our real life, I understand that, but I still can't get over whenever I see memes portrayed in fiction at all. It just completely takes me out of it. I see the importance of this book, and I will continue to tell you, like everybody has told you, that it's worth your time, I think, and I'm very glad for its success and what it might possibly mean for future successes of books of the sort by writers like Angie Thomas. The next thing that I read was Boundless by Jillian Tamaki. This is a weird little collection of illustrated short stories. I think Tamaki's art style will always be my favorite thing that I've encountered when it comes to graphic novels, comics, illustrated works, but I do think that this was my least favorite of anything that I've ever read by her, and considering I've read like 4 or 5 things by her, you could say that this didn't really connect with me like her other works did. I definitely think it was because they were short stories and it wasn't one linear plot and one linear group of characters. What she's trying to do here, the whole reason why it's called Boundless, is that she's trying to push boundaries, you know, the converging of the physical world with the virtual world. What is happening in our internet age? I thought the story collections all had like a unifying thread, but they just didn't connect with me as much as I really wanted them to. So that was a little bit of a bummer, but I will continue to read Tamaki because my eyes love looking at her art. The next thing that I read was On the Island by Tracey Garvis Graves. This was, in my opinion, a pretty nonsensical, sort of fluffy love story. I felt the characters were really flat. I believed some of the chemistry of the 2 characters, especially in the beginning. I could see the chemistry there. I could see the sparks, but you know, the last 2/3 of the book for me just did not work, and I thoroughly skimmed the last 2/3. Had all your typical tropes. These 2 characters shouldn't be together. Their parents don't agree. They break up. They get back together. There's this whole spiel with like CNN is like watching for them and they're like a top national news story, and all those things just did not matter to me. I really cared more about the fact that they were basically on an island stuck there, and kind of the survival story was more interesting to me, I think. It was compelling enough to make me skim, right? I finished the book, but it was not compelling enough for me to tell you go pick it up right now because it was just not that good. Still trying to find good romance stories. This one did not work for me. The next thing that I read was a poetry collection. It's called Indivisible, Poems for Social Justice, and this was by a lot of different poets, and it's all 20th century poetry. This had a really diverse set of voices, different minorities, different races, different genders. It was great because you could see lots of different ideas and ways of thinking, but it was also good because while some poems might not work for you, the next poem just might work for you. I especially loved the poetry by immigrants and all the Latinx voices that were featured in this. A lot of it I really felt like spoke to my family's immigrant experience, and I really enjoyed reading the kinds of subjects and thoughts that they took on in their poems. Those are things that I want to keep seeking when it comes to poetry, so this poetry collection really satisfied what I'm looking for in poetry. movie. The next thing that I read was a graphic novel called Spill Zone by Scott Westerfeld, Alex Puvilland, and Hilary Sycamore. I thought that the art was really great and colorful, especially when they were not in like the real world. It follows these two sisters, and the older sister is taking care of the younger sister. This older sister kind of goes into places she's not supposed to. It's kind of like a chemical waste site, and she takes photographs there that sell for a lot of money because nobody's supposed to be there. And it had a really entertaining premise for me, really interesting. I like that the waste side kind of felt a little bit like the upside down world of Stranger Things. It was definitely not as scary as Stranger Things, but it was definitely like an interesting place, and the way that the art was done made it seem like some place that I wanted to learn more about, like how did this occur and what are really the rules that govern this place, how does it actually work. So it did try to be creepy, it did try to be, you know, kind of mysterious, and I thought it accomplished it for the most part. There was a doll in it that was trying to be more Chucky-esque and creepy, and for me it felt more like Ted from the movies. And the other thing that kind of brought this down for me is the fact that the next volume is not coming out for like another year. I probably won't reread it, so I don't know if I'm going to continue on in the series. I wish more things happened in this first volume for me to care, to be invested enough to be like, yes, I must read the next one. And I also just wish the next one was coming out in 6 months and not, you know, a year. So that's not really inspiring a lot of confidence in me that I'm going to pick up the next one. I just realized I don't have 17 things to talk about. I have like 14 things to talk about. I started skipping numbers after Spill Zone. I went from 5 to 9 for some reason. The next thing after Spill Zone was Goldie Vance Volume 2. I so love this series, and I can't encourage you enough to pick it up. Just give it a shot. If you like anything like Nancy Drew or Veronica Mars, I think the series would totally be for you. I sort of wish this was like a TV series, because I feel like we really need this kind of series on TV right now, like a female sleuth-led, you know, mystery story trying to solve things using your wits and your gadgets to do that. I love Goldie, and I love the way she thinks, how she acts. I love that this focus so much on the female friendship between her and her best friend Cheryl. I also really enjoyed the mystery in this. I thought it was way better paced than the first volume, and it continues focusing on NASA. I loved learning about her mom as well. Goldie is a biracial character, and we hadn't learned about her mom yet. We had only learned about her dad before. So I really enjoyed this, and it brightened my spirits, lifted me up, and I can't wait for the next one. The next thing that I read was a really short book called On Tyranny by Timothy D. Snyder. He is a Yale history professor, and this book gives us suggestions, lessons on how to deal with diminishing democracies the way he sees it in our current day. And he does that by using 20th century examples to show us how the same things that we think can't happen in our democracies today, people thought in the past. And he specifically focuses a lot on World War II and Nazi Germany, because that's his focus in his research. So this book kind of punched me in the gut and had me nodding and tabbing a lot of it. I thought it was very persuasive, and it really spoke to my history heart. The history student in me was really happy reading this. Just the fact that history is so important, not necessarily kind of in the way that, you know, history repeats itself, but in the way that like things that we didn't think could possibly happen have happened in the past, so we should be prepared. This comfortable way that a lot of us live in the United States is not necessarily secure. So these are just suggestions and warnings for you to look out for, and ways that you can take actual practical action to fight for democracy. This book is certainly anti-Trump. I would love to hear more opinions, differing opinions, than Timothy D. Snyder's. I thought that it was really snarky, truthful, and really smart. That is it for this wrap-up. I have wrapped up 7 things. Now I've got to wrap up 7 more things in the next video. If you've read any of these things, or if you're interested in any of these things, let me know in the comments down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.